Hello and welcome to Green and Gold FC. We have a special two-parter today. We have news with Harry from AusFootHQ. He went a code name last time, Johnny, but this time he's coming out with his real name. Hopefully in future we can get his video as well. We also have an interview with Peter Petrov, a scout from Bulgaria who's been following the A-League professionally for a while as part of his employment. Even though he's not Australian and hasn't had prior interest in Australia, he's been pleasantly surprised at some of the talent here. Let's make introductions. So how are you going, Harry?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. And how are you going, Peter?
Hey guys, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Let's start with the first part, which is the news segment. Harry, if you don't follow him on Twitter, AusFootHQ or AusFootHQ. And it's basically the best place I've seen online for covering all the latest news. Lots of foreign language articles, which he goes through all the pain of translating for us and finding out what's going on there. So let's start with the transfers. Harry, why don't you take us through all the transfers which people at home might have missed, as well as rumours since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, absolutely. The most recent and probably the massive biggest transfer of the window just got announced yesterday, which is Aaron Kunda to Watford. So the fee for that deal was £2.5 million, as reported by Sky. And they also retain, I think, a 50% sell-on clause and also a buyback clause. That the figure of the buyback clause hasn't been released in the media so far. And Aaron Kunda signed a 5-year contract with Watford. And some details from Luca Bendoni, he just was on a podcast. He revealed that Watford were following Aaron Kunda for 6 months. Aaron Kunda was Watford's #1 target. And he said, and I quote, "He was not just a target as a winger. It was a project. It was something more than a signing. It is a statement. Signing such a player and such a talent on a permanent deal." So clearly they rate him very, very highly at Watford. And it's surprising. I thought potentially he was going to go for another loan. We know that Bayern value him very highly and rate him very highly, but it seems that Watford were able to convince Bayern to a permanent transfer. And I think the Championship's a fantastic league for Aaron Kunda. I think he'll develop really well there. He's really physical as well as just being a great player, so I think he'll be able to step up to the quality required of that league.
Can I quickly jump in here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a friend that has a really close link with Watford, and I had a chat with him yesterday about Aaron Kunda, and he reckons that considering the fee they've paid for him, he'll definitely have like high stars in the team, and he expects him to start, which is something that I was like slightly surprised considering that he's still in a development phase, like he's still really early in his development. But he says that like they rarely pay such fees these days, so it's considered a really big move for people there, and they believe in him a lot.
That's really good news. I wouldn't want to see him on loan to a lower league in a World Cup year as well. So who else have been assigned to the latest window? I believe there's some very, very young players on the list as well.
Yeah, so the next kind of transfer to watch, I would say, is Jordan Boss to Feyenoord. It's been reported he's definitely one of their targets, but they seem to be slightly cautious about signing him because of his previous injury record. He's just recovered from an injury. He was out for 6 months. And their primary transfer target, who was left back from Club Brugge, failed his medical, so they'd agreed to fee with the club, but he actually failed his medical. And so they didn't proceed on signing him. And then the news was released that they're keen on signing Boss. But since then, there's been talks that they might revisit the left back from Club Brugge, because they're kind of unconvinced on both with the injury records. Both have kind of had some injuries in the past, and it seems potentially they might be going back to Club Brugge, but that's definitely one to watch. I think Feyenoord would be a fantastic move for him. They're going to play Europa League football. One of the biggest teams in the Netherlands, and I think that would be a great place for him to develop his massive potential.
Do you think it's a bit too high a level? Feyenoord Club Brugge after 2 seasons in Belgium. It's obviously brilliant if he makes it. I'll be absolutely thrilled. A real statement for Australian football if he can make it at a young age. But do you think that's maybe a bit too high level, or do you think it's just the injuries holding him back?
I think it's the injuries holding him back. From all accounts, he's been playing really, really well at Westerlo, racking up the goals and assists, fantastic, like attacking fullback. I think the injuries have definitely just held him back and haven't allowed him to have that consistency. I believe in him to maybe step up, actually.
So one player which really caught my eye was Marcus Eunice to Brøndby. That one hasn't been doing the rounds, but that's the Danish league is quite a high quality league. I've been watching a lot with Motura there over the last few years. Is there any legs to that rumor, or are there any other clubs linked to Eunice?
So that's the only rumor that's been released to the media. It's been mentioned by like a tier 1 source for that side, sorry, that they're in dialogue with his team. So very much far from done. I imagine Eunice's team is in dialogue with a lot of clubs currently at the moment as well. I think Bromby's a good option for him. I think he's a very, very good player. And yeah, at his level, he's a step up. He's probably playing at a level above the A-League. So a team like Bromby, I think, is a good option for him at this stage in his career.
Absolutely. So, any other transfer rumors or confirmed transfers which caught your eye before we move on to some of the recent friendlies?
Yeah, so Lewis Miller, Socceroo, is a subject of interest from Blackburn Rovers and Charlton Athletic. So Hibs have recently rejected bids from both of those clubs of £1 million. And it's been reported that Hibs actually want to keep the player. The coach, David Gray, is a big fan of the player and rates him very highly, but they have an understanding that, they have to sell players at some point. They made a loss last season of around £7 million. So it's been reported that Hibs have set a price tag of £1.5 million for Lewis Miller. So that's definitely one to watch, and I can see that transfer materializing potentially. But it's also been, I just saw today that he might have picked up a knock recently. And someone just mentioned he might be out for 2 months, so that would definitely hinder any transfer, which is sad. I think the championship would be a great move as well for him. I think he's very physical as well, and his body could play the amount of games required in the championship. So I think that's a great move for one of those clubs and a good step up in his career.
That'd be amazing because he is a player which does get scapegoated a lot by fans, but is clearly rated very highly by coaches. So let's move on to some of the recent friendlies. There's been almost a friendly a day. We're almost into the Aussie abroad season for those who follow Australians playing in European leagues. In fact, I believe the Danish league has just started. Can you take us through who's been caught the eye, who's been a standout, and who might be maybe in a bit of danger of not, if anyone, hopefully there's no one in this category, but maybe in a bit of danger of not making the cut?
Yeah, it's great news with Portsmouth. Hayden Matthews, Jacob Farrell, Adrian Segicic, and Thomas Waddingham have all featured in Portsmouth friendlies. And Adrian Segicic has a goal and assist so far. Thomas Waddingham has a goal and assist so far. And Jacob Farrell and Hayden Matthews have played well by all accounts. So it's going to be fantastic to tune into Portsmouth during the season and potentially see 4 future Socceroos, all very young with massive potential, playing in a great side under a great manager in a good league. Also, Bodic has started in Austria. He scored 2 goals in a recent friendly and also played 45 minutes yesterday. I'm not sure exactly how many minutes for Austria in their loss versus a Berlin team. I can't remember exactly which one. Jalen Pearman, Keely Adamson, and Daniel Benny are playing for QPR in their recent friendlies, and they've been playing well by all accounts, talking to QPR fans.
So Keely Adamson playing at centre-back. Is that a bit of a surprise? I saw him as maybe someone who could potentially move to wing, but I prefer him at right-back. Centre-back is moving further back, which is obviously no problem for us, but as long as he gets game time. But is that a bit of a surprise?
Yeah, absolutely. Because he was played for MacArthur, I think, sometimes at right wing, or very attacking, and now he's seemingly playing at centre-back. And they're also playing Jalen Pearman at centre-mid, much deeper than he was playing previously. For Perth Glory, he was playing as a striker or number 10 sometimes. Well, I think even on the wing on occasions. And Daniel Benny, they're playing him at right back, which is interesting as well.
Yeah, just want to jump in as well regarding the players that QPR have signed, all the 3 Aussies. It's interesting because all 3 of them, I see them as very versatile players. And Pearman, it's interesting because he developed into a more attacking player recently. He used to be more of a central midfielder during his youth days, so I think he played a fair bit there. And with Adamson, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the games for the Olyroos, he's been playing as a left back. So he has a lot of versatility in him as well. And Daniel Benny, we also saw him at the Asian Cup playing right back. He's played, I think, a couple of games for QPR as a striker. Now, obviously he's a right winger, but all 3 very versatile, and I think that will help them in terms of getting minutes in the championship because they can play across different positions.
Of course, Daniel Benny got plenty of minutes last year for his age in the championship and at very many different positions. I saw him play striker. I think his starting games were in striker. And at right back, to me, he catches the eye about as much as Jordy Boss does at right back. So that's a weak position for the Socceroos. So I'm really hoping that he comes good in that position. We get plenty of minutes there. Were there any other friendlies which really caught your eye before we move on to Western United news or lack of news and some of the concerns around Western United?
That goal from Joe Lacey against Wrexham, I thought was incredible. He's a fantastic talent. And I also tuned in for Sydney FC's MPL team versus Western Sydney Wanderers, their MPL team, and he stood out again to me. I think he's a great talent and one to watch.
Yeah, he's been tearing it up, hasn't he? Okay, so let's final piece of news. So Western United, they managed to do the impossible. They said it couldn't be done. They paid their players on time. But are they? Do we have any other news on them? Is there any rumors? Are they going to be around for another season? Is the sale going through? Yeah. What can you tell us, if anything?
Oh, well, there was that clip from Tony Rallis on Football Fever, who said some pretty interesting things, to say the least. And I think one of them was that the APL didn't or was not going to approve the potential new owners. So if that is confirmed to be true, that's not great news. I think West United have been a great team in developing young talent. I'm not sure if Bodic would have the same trajectory if it wasn't for his pathway at West United under John Aloisi. They're also doing well with Reece Bozanovsky, Grimaldi, and Abel. So they're developing some really good players there. So I really hope it can continue, but it doesn't look positive at the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit of a worry. So that's something to cross your fingers at home for, that everything works out. Yeah, so let's hope they at least survive until we can, to be honest, to get other teams to take their place. Okay, so thank you so much, Harry from AusFootHQ. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He's, I think, been the best source of news during this off-season.
As well.
The news is just coming out. Yeah, I'm here in
Awesome.
English hours and I scroll through your feed and I see it giving updates in Australian times and in European times. It's great.
Thanks for having me on. Cheers.
Thank you. So turning to Peter. So welcome to part 2 of the show. Yeah. So tell me about yourself. How did you get into Australian football, of all things?
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Yeah, it's been a pretty hectic journey, to be fair. But do you want the long story or the short one?
Tell us about your employment and all that. How that came about.
Yeah. So early on, like as a kid, like everyone else, I wanted to play football. I wasn't too great at it. I've played like in the 4th tier of Bulgaria. It's what we call it village football. It's pretty terrible. So, and early on, like most people that are passionate about recruitment, I've played all sorts of games, Football Manager and all that. So that's when my passion started. I can say I got lucky because while I was studying in university, I got a call from a friend of mine that told me that he's working for a football data collection company called Football Radar. So I was looking for a job back then and I jumped in, went to an interview. I guess I got a bit of lucky on the interview. I don't know, but yeah, I started working for them, still functioning. They're a British company owned by the Reeds brothers, who are also owners of Notts County. So there are some really smart people there. So basically they collect data from all kinds of leagues across the world and do some really fun stuff with it. Basically, I started there. I watched all kinds of football. My first job there was called match analysis. I was a match analyst, so I watched all different kinds of leagues, starting from the Premier League and going to like V1 League in Vietnam, Finland, and all of that. So yeah, and back then I got promoted to another position where I had to become a league analyst and focus on a specific league. And I got assigned the A League because there were basically no other leagues available. And I wasn't too passionate about it back then because of the time difference. I had to wake up in like 4 or 5 in the morning to watch the earliest games and all that. But with time, I grew really fond of it and started loving the league. It's like fairly unique. I think the vibe about it is like very different to everything that we get in Europe. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And my job was to keep a database about the league, analyze players, games, post and pre-game analysis and all that. So yeah, that's how I went into it. And after leaving the company, I worked for them like 5 years and a half or something like that. So after leaving the company, I still continued following it. And yeah, here I am now.
So tell me about the global scouting scene. Like, how many of these companies are collecting data on the A League? Is it just this? Is this a unique company, or are there many rival companies putting professional eyes on the A League, looking for talent?
Yeah, that's a great question. Radar's a company that's fairly similar to what they got at Brighton with Tony Bloom. The thing they do is like this data collection process is unique for every like company around the world. I think we're seeing more and more people invest in stuff like that. So there's definitely a fair bunch of them now, but even outside of data collection companies, you have like scouting firms, have player platforms, all that, all the scouts at clubs and all that. I think the interest in the league is growing substantially. And now it's funny because like the funding is going down, but the interest in the league is going up because of all the young players getting a chance there. So I think we will like we'll continue to see more and more players get eyes on them. But at the moment, I think many clubs, especially across the UK, because obviously they have native English speakers in Australia. So obviously, clubs in the UK will be very interested, especially when they have the chance to sign players for less money and similar quality. I think John Mousinho was one of the. He's a pioneer these days, but I think he mentioned that in a recent interview, saying that you get similar quality to what you get from League One, but it's a lot cheaper.
Wow, that's quite a compliment. Actually, on that, you're a fairly unique set of eyes in that you're not Australian, you have no partisanship for or against Australia, and you're a professional, so you're not an amateur, as well as not having any conflicts of interest. And so, could you answer some of the perennial questions about where the Australian League ranks, what its pros and cons are? We hear people who are employed as A-League players who claim it's as good as League One in France, Ligue 1, I should say. And then you have, of course, there's always a forever civil war in Australian fandom of clubs are no longer excluded, say no, it's conference league level. Can you settle the debate as once and for all?
I have to say, a couple of years when I started my Twitter account, and that's the only reason I started going on Twitter, was just to chat with people about the A-League, because like no one in Bulgaria cares about it. So yeah, that was the only place where I could have any sort of conversations with people. But to be honest, back then I got involved in all these like scraps about what's the level of the league and all that. And there's no correct answer. I mean, you can't answer with like 2-3 words. It's hard. I don't think that's the way to analyze football. But as a whole, I think the level is pretty similar to League One in England. But in saying that, it's very different, because we've also all of us we've also seen the Scottish League being compared to League One in England, and I know that people in Scotland don't want to hear that. But if you ignore for a minute Celtic and Rangers, the actual level is similar, and it's also similar to the A-League as well. But at the same time, all these leagues have their own unique styles in terms of like tactical, so the way they coach players, technical qualities and all that. So if you want to talk about level in terms of, let's say, not quality, because quality is hard to judge, but in terms of strength, I think they all three of these leagues are pretty similar. Obviously Scotland, where you have like Rangers and Celtic, I don't put them in this common denominator.
Absolutely. If you play for Celtic and Rangers, you pretty much walk into the Socceroos starting 11 these days. On the question of style, we've gone through a fairly strange decade. Had strange or good or bad or beautiful, whatever adjective you want to use.
It's interesting because that's one of my favorite topics when it comes to the A-League, because you have like a pretty unique formation-based style, which is like very rare to see in Europe. And I think it probably dates from when Graham Arnold took over at the Mariners and after that at Sydney. But this like 4-2-2-2 formation, I think like there was a point maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago when that formation was like exclusively played across the whole league. I mean, there was probably one side in the country playing a different formation. So that was pretty crazy. But overall, I think the A-League moves a bit slower in terms of tactical trends. So we basically get... I don't want to put Ange in this conversation because I don't think his Brisbane Roar were actually that similar to Guardiola's Barcelona. I think it was just the nickname. But Ange's team was like more dynamic in terms of speed. Never mind. What I wanted to say was that the A-League treads a bit slower in terms of tactical evolutions, and you get these spans between seasons where it's just pure chaos. It's super transitional, and I think that's one of the one of the charms of the league, because you get so many absolutely insane games, and we've all seen that. So I love that because once the a trend is settled, you get like most of the teams going in that direction, and you can get like seasons where it's more tactical. I think not last season, but the season prior to that, we had a slightly slower league compared to previous seasons, where the Mariners tried to set an example of playing strictly possessional football and strictly slow build-up. And that definitely had an influence on the league.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the talent coming through. So this is in our history. I don't know how much you know about our history, but we had this wave of talent coming in through in the early 90s, which seems to have reached a higher peak in their early careers than some of the players we're producing now. But still, this is the second time we've gone through this. Back then, I remember, I wasn't alive then, but I've followed the history. There was this player who absolutely dominated the league at the age of 18. His name was David Seal. He's a forward, and he ended up over in Europe after being very, very hyped up, having a very mediocre club career. And then there's a player which came a couple of years later, Mark Viduka, and he took one extra year to dominate the league. And so he's obviously a very much more famous name. There didn't look like there's going to be much difference between them. In fact, if you look at their record at under 18, you'd think that David Seal would end up being a better player. So all that's to say is that it can be really hard to tell who's going to make it to a higher level from the Australian League and whatnot. Is there anything is it just like the mentality of the player stepping up, or is there like some qualities which you look for as an analyst and say, okay, this is something which can transition higher, whereas this quality is something which is great for dominating this level of league, but maybe wouldn't translate to a higher level?
Yeah, good question. I think we can start from Scotland again, because as we've seen, so many Aussie players have moved there over the last 2 or 3 years. And if you look at, again, I'll put in a caveat, you can't point at one specific thing and say this is the difference maker. For me, if you look at Scotland, because we have a pretty good a sample size of players there at the moment, you have players like, and obviously they had injury issues, but it's still related. You have players like Arzani, like Tilio, even Neuenhoff if you want to include him, maybe even Stamatopoulos. So the players that are of high technical quality, but maybe don't have as much as in terms of physical preparation, or naturally gifted in terms of physicality. On the other side, you can just like I can count them on my hand, but you have Lewis Miller. The first thing that comes to mind is physically strong, huge, good in the air, top speed is great. You have Cameron Devlin. He's small, but he's like the most intense player I've ever seen on the planet. You also have Keanu Bacchus, another very intense player, someone with really strong core strength. You have Ryan Strain, another guy that just goes up and up down the pitch all game. So for me, that's been a big difference maker in terms of Australian players making it or not making it in Europe. Just the physical preparation and intensity. And I think we're going to see now, when there's more eyes on the league, I think we're going to see more players that are obviously physically better than the others make the move, rather than just focusing on technicality. Because I think we've seen over the last couple of years there's a pretty good technical base level in the A-League. But in terms of intensity, pressing and all of that, I think it's slightly on the lower scale. So they're like larger spaces, easier to play, less intensity in games. Obviously, it's also connected to weather conditions and all that. But the big difference for me is, mentality is huge. Without it, you can't do anything in football. But after that, I think definitely the physical quality and physical preparation is super important. And what I also wanted to mention is the players that we discussed, the QPR boys. Maybe set Pearman aside, but just look at Daniel Benny. He looks small, but the guy plays with so much intensity. And when he plays in the under age groups, he looks so much stronger than all the other players. And you also have that with Keely Allenson. He's super intense. Sprints are great. He makes a ton of runs without the ball. he presses well, he knows when and where he has to be, so that's super important.
Yeah, so that's really interesting because I remember we've consciously been trying to get away from the Aussie stereotype of selecting the most athletic players and neglecting, the late developer who's technically gifted but athletically weak. Now, you mentioned also Scotland, which might be an extreme example of how much maybe they emphasize physicality more than the other leagues. Is this true that maybe we're athletically remedial? Some of our players are athletically remedial, even when you look at the more technical leagues like Belgium or Netherlands, that this is something that we could improve as a developing country.
I think, again, we talked about this with you before the pod, but I think there are a couple of issues when it comes to physicality, as I mentioned to you, and one of them is like having all these other coaches that like steal your strongest players, and they're like, for example, playing multiple sports when they're younger in school or all that. So that's a factor. But in terms of technicality, I think we've also seen a fair bunch of players go to Belgium recently, and yeah, you have like Jordi Boss is the best example, and he doesn't look out of place there at all. He's been fantastic, and if you set aside his injuries, I think he definitely has the potential to play at the higher levels. Yeah, Scotland's maybe a extreme example, but you also have Segic went to Holland. I think he did well. I can't say I've watched like a ton of games of him there, but based on the fact that he was like a pretty consistent starter and scored a decent number of goals, I think he did well there. You also have Younes, although in Younes' case, I think he's pretty unique because he has both. He's super strong and physically gifted, and also has that technical quality. So if I had to put a label on Aussie players, I think most of them are like at a decent level at both. But when you go to the extremes, it becomes hard.
Yeah, if you have a really technical player that's physically remedial or a physical player that's technical remedial, unless you have a coach which really has a specific role in mind for you, it can be hard to make it in Europe. So technical, we've been thinking a lot about how to fix that over the last 10 years. And also there's been, my last pod had some new ideas on how to, go to another level technically. Physically, what can we do about it, if anything? Is it just we deal with the talent we have, or are there ways that we could A-League clubs could invest more in the athletic development of young players up there?
Yeah, you can always do something. Like there's so many ways to coach and to make players better these days. There's so many studies, so many intelligent people doing a lot of great stuff. I'm not a coach myself, so I don't want to like give specific examples because they may be not like that accurate. But there's one thing that for me is super important, and it's funny because I've heard people like in clubs say it shouldn't be done, but at the same time, I think it's super important for players to work more outside of their daily trainings. Like you see it everywhere across other sports. Like 1 hour per day is just not enough training, and you have basketball players training for like so much more per day or per week. And football is one of the sports where you have like less intensive training per day or per week compared to other sports. So I think having personal coaches or having personal training at your club after training, that can be super valuable, especially at the right time, because when you're when it's early, when you're developing really small young kids, it's not good to go overboard with in terms of intensity. But when you reach like 20 years of age, that's your peak human like performance time, if you want to call it. So you have like so much energy and time to train, because if you're a professional, what else are you doing after training? And 1 or 2 hours per day of training, I don't think it's enough.
So do you think on top of personal training, is that with the ball or is that also gym work?
It can be both, but yeah, with the ball, because 99% of teams do gym work as well. And I can't really give advice on gym work because it's not like like standard training that you just go to the gym to keep fit. Footballers don't train with weights that much and all of that. So it's really important because it's also about strengthening the ligaments and all of these things. So yeah, gym work is also really important. But yeah, I was referring to ball practice.
So, are we a bit held back by the fact that we have a really, really short season? Is that affecting our athletic development?
Yeah, we've heard it like a lot of more experienced people than me have said before. Like we had Graham Arnold say it like almost every press conference with the soccer rules. It's obviously just not long enough. It's not enough football. You have like leagues where they play more than 40 games a season, like Belgium and all that. So yeah, it's not enough.
Fair enough. So let's talk about some individuals. Are there any individuals where you think this player, this transfer window, they will not just do well, maybe whether they do well this year or whatever, that could be up to injuries or maybe the coach having their own personal views, but who really stands out as someone that could not just make it at the level they're at, but maybe even jump up a level again if career goes well for them?
Yeah, I think for me, all the Pompey boys are great players. I think all of them have super high ceilings. It's really, as you said, really important to keep fit. And I've recently mentioned it on another podcast, but for them, I think they've received a fair bit of scrutiny because of those injuries. But I think the people that have brought them to the club believe in them a lot. So they will be given time, and a lot of these injuries probably had a fair bit to do with what we just discussed about the difference in intensity and difference in just the sheer number of training and playing football that they have over there in the UK compared to Australia. So they probably struggled a bit with that. I think I've even seen Thomas Waddingham say it in an interview that he didn't expect the difference to be that big. I think if they keep fit, all of the kids that went to Portsmouth, I think Matthews, we've seen like the guys, like he looks like he's made to play center back. He's just big, tall, strong, great with his feet, fantastic passer. For me, he's the perfect championship center back if fit and if coached correctly. So I'm really excited to see him play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes it easier when four Aussies in the same club. If they all start at the
Yeah.
same time, that's I would cancel absolutely everything I'm doing to have a watch. But what about some of the players which have gone to other leagues? I know Casey Boss to Mainz. Is it crazy that he could get game time? I mean, we haven't had too many go all the way to the Big Five straight from the A-League, or do you think he's more development player going on loan, or do you see him having a ceiling in for a club like Mainz?
Yeah, I'm actually happy that you asked because I think my opinion on Casey Boss differs a fair bit compared to most people. Because for me, he's a lot better than most people think. One first thing that is for me is I know that I put a lot of emphasis on that, but he's just physically so ahead of most of the guys of his age in the A-League. So I believe that if given enough time to settle and if he's happy and given playing time, I think he has more than enough quality to play at that level. And again, as we also mentioned about Aaron Kunda, I think Mainz have invested a fair bit of money in him. So I believe he has all the tools to be successful. It's hard to compare him to his brother in terms of where Jordan was when he left, but for me both of them can be our Socceroo starting quality fullbacks. And when Jordi Boss not fit enough, I think Casey, if given playing time and his peak condition, he has all the tools that are needed to be a starting quality fullback for Australia.
They have very different qualities. Geordie has a lot more. He
Guile.
takes players on a lot. He dribbles a lot more. He likes to shoot from difficult positions a lot more. Casey seems to be more creative, from my perspective, picking a difficult pass. So yeah, I'm not sure which one. We know that Geordie didn't go straight to the Big Five. He's the more famous of the two brothers at the moment. But yeah, it's one of those things where does Casey, his different profile but similar quality, is it like a profile which fits more for a Bundesliga side than Geordie? Is that why he potentially might make the jump straight away, or would you see them as too early to tell?
Yeah, I'm not sure in terms of why Jordi didn't make a move straight to a big league. I don't know the details, but I do believe that like it depends a lot on the person himself, because sometimes you get players that are confident and believe that they can make a difference straight, like jump in the deep water and make a big difference. sometimes you have more analytical players that believe that going to a smaller but league that's better and developing players might be better for them. So it's really hard to tell why Casey made a straight switch to the Bundesliga and Jordi didn't. But I don't think that like Jordan's worse. If anything, he's a bit ahead in terms of development. So I think both of them have the quality to play at the Bundesliga level. So it's just a matter of time, and we just have to wait and see how they develop.
Yeah, fair enough. So what about A-League players which haven't made the jump? Are there any way you say, well, this person's ceiling is so high, particularly if there's someone which maybe no one else is paying a lot of attention to right now?
I think there's like a lot of players that will go on and have great careers and make moves like sooner or later. I think just off the top of my head, it's the Abel Walt is one that I really enjoy watching in Leicester United. But yeah, a ton of names. I don't want to like ignore someone or say anything like stupid, but yeah, another name that just popped up in my head after watching today's friendly between Wellington and Wrexham is like Gabriel Swan Rodriguez. He looks super impressive. Keep an eye for him, out for him. But yeah, a ton of players. I think this season, I believe they'll like be even more young players playing in the league. So I expect all kinds of records to be broken. To be fair.
So speaking of records, we are slowly on the up in terms of how much money is going per club. I think last season, the full season came in as something like 22 million over, I guess it was 12 clubs back then. So you're looking at, 2/3 of the way to the salary floor. Yeah. Is there any way we can accelerate that? What's keeping that low? Is it poor contract decisions? Is a salary cap a barrier? Is it just our reputation just needs to build over time? Yeah, what can we do to improve the transfer values? And where do you see is what we can reach, a realistic target for what clubs can reach?
Yeah. I think it's a bit of everything that you mentioned there. But firstly, the more important thing is like longer contracts. Just clubs have to believe in their talent and give them longer contracts. I think we've seen Adelaide do it. I think they offered Kikianis a fairly long contract for A-League standards, for example. So that's the first thing. Second thing is obviously the lack of a domestic transfer system makes that harder because clubs and teams don't want to commit to players to contracts that long, especially players. They don't want to like sign a 5-year contract and, for example, have a new coach next year and he doesn't like him, but they can get rid of him and all that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think a lot of these A-League clubs, they just should be a bit tougher in terms of negotiating, because we've seen multiple times players just been allowed to move without any compensation or transfer fee, and I don't think in the future that will happen this often, but it's been an issue before. And lastly, it's reputation is definitely a big thing. Even I can give you a super basic example, just jump on transfer market and like look at Serbian players that play for the 10th ranked team in Serbia, and their market value will be like similar to the best players in the A-League. It's just you have to have eyes on the league, and you need people to notice the league, and that just happens with time, accolades, wins, and yeah.
I guess after nearly 20 years out of the European transfer market, we have to rebuild our reputation. Succeeds in Europe raises the price and sustainability of football back home, whatever format football back home takes. So where do you see us in 5 to 10 years? So I know the last 20 years, since the golden generation retired, I guess I said 20 years, it's a little bit less than about 15 years. Typical Socceroos team, you see maybe 1 to 2 players who are either first choice in the Big Five or playing for a club like Celtic, Rangers, Feyenoord, one of those Club Brugge, or one of those top clubs in a second tier league. So maybe 1 to 3 is probably round average for the last 15 years. With this flux of players over there, this is a new world for us. Certainly haven't been there for a very long time. Assuming we keep it up, assuming nothing crazy happens, like a country blows up, or an asteroid hits the planet, or or the league folds, there's or something like that. Where do you see us on paper? We're going to have more players in the Big Five. How many do you think would be a realistic target, or for those top clubs?
Yeah, it's tough times. The future, nobody knows will happen in the future, especially in this crazy league. I can't say anything about the league itself, but in terms of the soccer rules, I believe that, yeah, as you said, like this influx of young players going to Europe, I think it will definitely have a big impact on the national teams. It's hard to give like a definitive answer in terms of numbers, but I believe that we'll definitely see more players playing in the top 5 leagues. Maybe not in like high Euro standards of like Liverpool and all that, but I think we'll see a bunch of them playing for lower ranked leagues in the top 5 leagues, and especially in 5 years time we'll have like all these kids that we see now developed and like in their prime. Like you have Segicic and all of these guys, they're like 20 21 now, and in 5 years time they'll be like 26 or 27. So that's peak age for especially for attacking players. So who knows, I think there's a probability that Australia can have a decent bunch of players playing at a really high level.
Oh, that's good news looking forward. So I'm not an analysis, so I'm going to not hedge. I'm going to don't have a reputation at stake. So I'm going to say new average will be around about half a dozen in about 5 to 10 years in the top 5 leagues. Of course, assuming nothing major changes. Hopefully some major changes happen, like a National Youth League, a longer season, and a second tier, maybe even, who knows, maybe even the Holy Grail of promotion and relegation. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, Peter, and thank you earlier for Harry for joining us. It's been a really informative listen. I look forward to hearing more of your analysis. And for those of you at home, please, if you have any comments, remember to join our forum at greenandgoldfc.com. And we are available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, that's all we have time for. It's bye for now.